Right, guys, well, thanks for joining. So we're recording this so we can share some clips later. So what this is lunch and learn about cybersecurity and our assessment of current threats and our recommendations on how to manage threats. If you have any questions or any comments, feel free to speak up during the presentation, or we'll follow up at the end. So today we'll talk a bit about right click. I'm gonna talk about the threat landscape. We'll hand it off to Mark and Connor to talk about our cybersecurity compliance and our application to monitor it. Anyone that's joining today, we're going to go ahead and give access to the right click shield application. We'll talk about some more details on how this shield works. It's a really great way to track how far along your business is in being compliant with cybersecurity. Additionally, we have you can pick one of these offers. Monica's the one that manages the offers at our office. Her contact information is at the bottom here. So for joining this call, like you qualify for one of these offers, we'll do a light gap analysis where we'll check if there's some security issues on your system. We can do a penetration test, or we can do an in-person cybersecurity training. Just like this event, one of our top missions is to train the community and get the cybersecurity information out there. About right click, anyone here that doesn't know, we've been involved in IT in Southern California for almost 30 years. So we've seen a lot of changes over the years. Our mission is really to help businesses succeed, to learn our clients' business and help them reach their objectives. In regards to cybersecurity, we're here to help companies be more proactive and help them not get derailed with some type of hack. Our business is a 24/7 business, so we're available all the time. We do security monitoring and we do proactive maintenance. Here's a snapshot of our growing team. These are a few of the services we do. Our main service was called Managed IT Services. So we run like we're the IT department at a client, or a larger client has their own IT department. We help participate and work as a team together. Right-click provides strategy and security for our clients. The strategy and security that we provide is it's more like on a virtual CTO basis. We'll get to understand the business plan of the client, get to understand the market, the needs, and what's appropriate for them. What we're really trying to do is bring enterprise level security to small and medium business. We have our technical team that works with infrastructure. So we'll manage the standard infrastructure of a client, like firewalls, switches, wireless access points. And I talked about how we really provide this CTO service as well. We do user experience. We don't call it user support. We call it user experience, which really means helping your staff feel like they have a good support and quality of life while they're operating computers at our client's business, and that includes around the clock coverage, after hours work, helping their computers be dialed in and ready to go for them when they need it. Our security, and this is what we're going to be talking about more today, it's what's called a stack, which really gives what you'd have a defense in depth. So, excuse me, there's multiple layers to cybersecurity. We provide one simple package, this endpoint defense and management, it's an endpoint security product. So we're installing a stack of security on the computer endpoints. And what that allows us to do is not only defend, but proactively monitor and watch out for inbound threats. Okay, enough about right click. On to what we're seeing, this like threat landscape. Looking back over the past year, here's some examples of what we've seen. Some of the top ones would be the Microsoft token steal. Most of our clients are running Microsoft 365, which is their main platform for email. Some clients are running Google, similar. In Microsoft 365, we've known for the past several years, it's essential to have this two-factor authentication. So when you have your two-factor authentication enabled, it's harder to get into your account. The hacking now is less of brute force. It's more of trying to trick the end users to providing their password and letting someone log in. So the two-factor protected against that. They provide the password, but the attacker would not have maybe this text code or this second factor in an application on their cell phone. Well, now there's some man-in-the-middle attacks. There's ways to steal this token or this second factor. And that had been really eye-opening in the past year, where it had been coming out more, and it was surprising. So some businesses that felt they were protected, felt they invested and did the right thing, were open. And this is a real rough attack, because when someone gets into your Microsoft system, they're sending emails as you, they're impersonating you, and they might be doing things like telling your clients to pay a different bank account, or trying to go up the chain and trying to trick some other bigger business that you work with. So there's some protections for this thing I'll talk about. That was the big newer hack. And then we're seeing more advanced ransomware, where ransomware, of course, is when an attacker gets you to click a link and encrypt or scramble all your data, and they try to scramble your backup data at the same time so you cannot restore, and they want you to pay a ransom to get your data back. The industry's response is to make backups more secure, more immutable. So in a ransomware situation, you can get your company back up and running right away. But in the old ransomware, what would happen is your data would get scrambled, but the attacker wouldn't actually have your data. They would have just had you click something that locked it. You couldn't see it, but they didn't have your data. But newer ransomwares now, these advanced ones, they're extracting your data, they're uploading it off your servers, and then there's a follow-up threat of releasing this confidential information to the dark web. So this is something to really be aware of. Dropbox hack is a newer one, and this is all in response to clients hardening their base email system, hardening their base Microsoft 365 system. So you might have a secure Microsoft 365 system. You might even be protected against token stealing. But like on Dropbox, if you don't have all the protection there, you might have some end users that have Dropbox accounts, and this is what we've seen. Some end users have Dropbox accounts that don't have the extra two-factor security. The hacker goes into Dropbox, they hack that account. They can send out emails from Dropbox that'll say it's like from you, it's like shared files. So it's essentially the same thing as hacking your email and sending out the emails. And those are phishing tricks. The lesson there is to really watch for any other third-party software that your end users are using, and maybe had used before and still had accounts on. And the last is like payroll hacks. We're seeing and this is a tricky one, is a hacker will impersonate that they're one of your staff, your employees, and they're sending an email from their personal Gmail or something that's saying like, hey, I've changed my bank account, or they're logging into the payroll apps. If you're using a big payroll provider, they're logging in and changing the bank account and sending the payment to an incorrect place. So it's really important to identify what's the actual email that someone's using, what's the process for making any changes like this. So these are these top threats that we're seeing. And this is a more advanced way of defining this. So most people are aware of the ransomware, and then like these advanced phishings hitting the Microsoft 365. These next areas, the cloud security and supply chain, these are when it's not an end user clicking on something, but more like the software is under threat and it's getting hacked. And the real protection against that is limiting your attack surface, limiting how much what software you use, using trusted software, keeping it up to date. So to address this, like some best practices, and what we're really talking today is some of the newer best practices to address some of these more advanced hacks. And why are we facing advanced hacks? The reason we're facing this is that the bad actors are making so much money. And we've just seen it in our practice at RightClick. Of course, RightClick handles just a small slice of businesses, just our clients. And we've seen a lot of times we meet a new client because they've been through something like this. This is usually when we meet a new client, it's usually something rough has happened. There's usually been a lot of times it's a hack or something. And when we're seeing this a lot in our practice, we're extrapolating this out. Wow, like the bad actors are making a lot of money. So us getting this information out, we're really helping, like we work together and make it harder for them to do this. But you have a coordinated enemy going after your data, really. So best practice here is balanced IT infrastructure strategy. This really means is in the past, if you had low investment in IT, then maybe there's a lot of support. And like what we'd like to see is modern systems that doesn't require very much support. So then you're not spending on IT technicians like supporting the end users, but we're more balancing this to proactive cybersecurity, and so less having to spend on the recovery and support side. What you want to do is you can think of your business data as crown jewel data. So not all data is the same at your business. So think like if you have an ERP system, a main database, maybe your email system, something that's very important, that should get the priority, that should get the security spending. You don't have to spend evenly across the whole enterprise. This is sometimes when we talk about an enclave, a secure enclave, you have one area that gets spent on. Cybersecurity, this is where we're at today. What we do today will change in the next year, will change in the next year. So this is not a problem that is a one and done thing. So it's very much like build. So what we want to do is really think about prioritizing. So think about the crown jewel data, think of that first, and then work from there what to protect. Now, proactively defending your data is not just having a defense or a security product. It used to be just defense. And if we go way back, it was like antivirus. I've got this antivirus defense, okay? Antivirus barely works anymore because the old antivirus are signatures that are just checking for a certain type of malware thing to happen. Where now what we're looking for is behavior, like a surprising or unusual behavior to happen. A lot of files to be uploading somewhere. Someone getting access to something, someone signing in from a different location. And so how we proactively defend is when I mentioned we have the security stack. So you want to think of a couple of ways. First, we do want to have the defense, and defense means they don't call it antivirus as much anymore. We'll call like an EDR, like endpoint defense software. But then in addition, you have cyber hygiene, which is patching and keeping everything up to date. But then like you want to always assume that there is an opening or something that you're missing. So you want an outside group that's checking. So, and how you do that is you do it two ways. You either do what's called a vulnerability scan. And with the vulnerability scan, it's not your active security product. It's another product that scans your computer network and sees, oh, I see this, I'm warning you, this thing isn't up to date, or this is open, this can potentially happen. So you have your defense up, but you also have an active scan. You have an active vulnerability scan. And this is like, there's really like 3 points to this. Okay, so you've got your defense, you've got your vulnerability scan, and the third thing you should have is an active monitoring. And the highest level of that is called a SOC, a Security Operations Center. And what the Security Operations Center will do is there's so much security information now, even on a small network. Some of our clients only have 10 computers, a very small network. There's still a tremendous amount of information from a 10 computer network. There's a firewall at the office, there's the PCs, there's some cloud services, and there's a lot of information to look at. And oh boy, that 10 user network is difficult to manage because there's not so much budget there to do that. And so there's some newer products now in relation to Security Operations Center where it will take the log files from the firewall, the computer, all these endpoints, centralize them into one place, and then filter what's important and send it to a group. So this is like one of the things like our company would do is our SOC will monitor this. And instead of having to log into every separate thing, they'll get one console and it'll show some unusual things happening. That's what the SOC is supposed to catch. So remember in your security policy at your company, you want to have defense going on, the protection, the patching, like the active defense, but then you want to test it. And usually you test it with some type of vulnerability scan. And when you do vulnerability scans, you'll hear a penetration test, which is from the outside in, and you have internal vulnerability scans. For most businesses, the internal vulnerability scan is most important. The external penetration test is more if you have servers that are open to the internet. You're a bigger business, you have a lot of servers that you're sharing information. Most smaller businesses, they're not sharing a lot outside their office, but they might have some vulnerabilities in their network. They want to have an internal vulnerability scan. That should be going. And then great if you can have some type of SOC monitoring, some centralized checking on this. And now the good news is there's products that simplified this and make a smaller business can do these high-level things. And then finally, we really want to do some things to assume, like all that said, something's going to go wrong. Because the end users have access to your data, an end user might click on something and still, might get a ransomware, encrypt your files. So the key is make sure when that happens, you have a solid backup and the backup is immutable, so it can be recovered. And so we really want to test the backup. We're going to assume that no matter what we did, there was an incident. And it's a lot easier to and less expensive to have the ability to almost for sure recover from an incident than to 100% prevent an incident. 100% prevention is super expensive and elusive, but you can have really lower the chance of an incident, and then having strong recovery. That's not elusive. Having strong recovery is totally possible. And that's really where you want to focus is on your backup area, and then be able to respond. And that really helps with having regular cybersecurity training. So here we go. This is a little bit of summary of what I'm looking at and what I talked about. But basically what we want to think is in regards to cybersecurity spending is think about the crown jewel data, protect the crown jewel data, and protect it also against what are the most likely attacks, which the most likely attack now is phishing. And the second one is the crypto virus attack. So watch out for that. Inside of RightClick, just to bring you into like our internal workings, we have a cybersecurity framework. And you'll hear the other guys talk about cybersecurity frameworks a little bit, but what a framework is, it's just a standard that's been agreed to, the best way to handle cybersecurity. And so for regulated businesses, you'll hear things like the HIPAA and the CMMC are official frameworks. So these are simple frameworks borrowed from that can help businesses understand how secure are they. The way a cybersecurity framework works is if you decide you want to be a level 2 business, which means pretty highly secure, and you complete all the steps in this level 2 area, but you miss one tiny step in level 1, then you're not even a level 1. So cybersecurity builds upon itself. So some of the controls, and when I talk controls, are the actual security protocols that you're putting in. You have to satisfy all of them to reach a certain level. A framework is a way of thinking about cybersecurity, and it's a way of managing. So our goal is our objective is how do we get that information to decision makers or managers to really understand here's the threat, and here's how my business is positioned against the threat, and then I can budget and spend appropriately. I'm going to share one last thing here. This is 3 types of businesses. On this chart here, I'm showing risk and a loss from the risk. And you don't want to be in the top right of this chart. It means the risk is how likely is something to happen. So crypto virus and phishing are very likely. If you're not protected from them, they're actually almost for sure going to happen. And then also they're kind of disastrous for your business. You lose a lot of money. So you want to protect against those. We call that chaos security. So if you don't have the basic cyber hygiene, which is patching your computers, having some security product on the computers, some monitoring of them, some type of basic control, you're in a little chaos world and you're very exposed to this. So when I showed the RightClick standards, so this is a level 1 business that just did these level 1 security controls, and I'll just toggle back to that. So level 1 here is basic hygiene. That's your controls. That's all you do. The rest is having employee training and communication standards. Communication standards is an important one, which is just telling your staff, I'm not going to text you. I'm not going to email you from a personal Gmail. We all just use our company system, which is maybe Microsoft Teams or email or Gmail, whatever we use. That's a standard. That's really important. That really takes you out of chaos IT. And we still see on this chart, we're exposed to these things, but now the risk level or the likelihood, we brought the likelihood of the line of business breach or the phishing much lower, which is what we're at. And this was an inexpensive way to do it. And as we go down, if we get to a level 2, now it's much less likely these things are going to happen to us. And then level 3, more advanced, I call this leverage. So this is a very mature business, mature in regards to IT. This business can confidently try to expand and not feel that they're a great risk to get derailed in some way. Okay, this business has a good cybersecurity program. This used to be a very expensive thing to do because these level 3 controls, this is this extra monitoring or checking, these vulnerability scans, these SOC systems that are watching from the outside, which if you at first think about it, you're not getting an actual defense from it. It's like double checking. This double checking is so important though, because the way an attacker gets into your system is they first get into your system and usually nothing happens right away. A lot of times it takes days or weeks till they do something. So that extra checking, finding it, boots them out before something bad happens, and it really helps you leverage your system. So this is the goal. This is where you want to head towards. And we talked about this. These are just what you work towards on these cybersecurity controls. And with that said, I'll go ahead and hand off to Mark. He's going to share a little bit about our compliance, and then Connor will talk about the cybersecurity app.
Thank you so much, Jim. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Okay, I hope everybody's having a great Friday afternoon. So what I'm going to be talking about is CMMC and other cybersecurity frameworks. But before that, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Mark Gann. I'm one of the newer right-click employees with, I'd like to think, a pretty strong cybersecurity background. Before I go into kind of my experience, I kind of want to give everybody an idea of how I started and got into cybersecurity. So turning 35 next month, but over 20 years ago, I got into cybersecurity because of online gaming. And that's when the inception of Xbox Live was kind of in the market. And what ended up happening was I got DDoS attacked. And then my dad's credit card got compromised, and he thought that I used the credit card, and this whole thing happened. So that's where all of this started for me personally. From that DDoS attack, I started understanding how networks worked and focused on my studies and academics into college. So after attending the University of Richmond, I went straight into Deloitte Federal Consulting, where I focused heavily on defense contracts. I'd like to think about 70-80% of my project experience, and then also HIPAA with the NIH and PCI engagements as well. So that's kind of how I got into this, and now I'm with RightClick. So today I want to talk about what right-click shield is. Jim mentioned that during his slides. So right-click shield is our new cybersecurity division that we're really focusing on not just cybersecurity compliance, but overall cybersecurity for our client needs. But for now, CMMC is kind of the main accreditation standard that most of our clients and what the market is adhering to now. Before I go into the details and granularities of CMMC, there is the new finalized rule that has been updated. So on October 11th of this year, the finalized CMMC rule was initiated, which will take place on December 16th and for the first phase of implementation, and then quarter 1 and 2 respectively thereafter. So 2025 is a really big year, not just for CMMC, but just for defense contracts in general. So in light of defense contracts, now the Department of Defense has created the CMMC maturity program. With that being said, it kind of adheres to a specific set of requirements based off of the NIST 800 series framework, specifically 171. And Jim mentioned the word change. That's the nature of cybersecurity. So though there are certain revisions out for any sort of accreditation, something could happen. A 0-day might happen right after this call, and that would force all the updates for all the different and various frameworks. Um, so a little bit more detail on CMMC. So a lot of this process is based off of 110 requirements, again, based off of the NIST 171 framework. It also maps to the FedRAMP and FIPS 140-2 encryption standards as well. Now, CMMC, a very popular accreditation is version 2 level 2, which specifically calls out to controlled unclassified information. Now, that type of information has been a big question for a lot of clients where what is CUI, for example? And CUI is something that is discussed during the gap analysis phase and risk assessment phase per any project or engagement, because it's based off of a contract that's given by a defense agency. So, for example, if the Navy were to give you a defense contract with CUI, the Navy would be the one to dictate the parameters and the definition for that CUI type of information. Now, if the Army wanted to give a similar contract, their definition of CUI might be slightly different from the Navy. So CUI is something that needs to be well defined throughout the entire process for version 2 and revision 2. And that's something that is really essentially the whole backbone of the version 2, level 2 accreditation. Now, it's kind of set up into a different type of tiered model assessment. So based off of your organization, whether it's small, medium, or large, there's different security categorizations that can be adhered to. Now, though these slides are focusing on CMMC, part of the solutions and implementations will be beyond that specific accreditation and will encompass all of the different frameworks. Now, this different tiers that I've been mentioning. So level 2, like I mentioned, is the most popular for now. This could change. But as of right now, these are the 3 different main tiers of the CMC accreditation process. Right-click is actually on its way to going beyond level 3 currently for our secure enclave. In the next couple of slides, I'll go into more detail of what a secure enclave looks like. This graphic is kind of a great way to really separate the different type of requirements per level. So in level 2, you see how there's 110 different security requirements. Now, any organization that's willing or wanting to go with the CMC level 2 accreditation process, there are 110 requirements based off of 14 control domains from the NIST framework. The key here is that those 110 requirements must be adhered to. But there fortunately are ways to submit for an accreditation without having the 110 requirements. And that's where plan of action and milestone documentation would be created to supplement that. And you have roughly around 180 days to implement those POEMs. And if you have any questions during this process, feel free to reach out to anybody on our team, and we can reach you offline. Now I really want to talk about Right-Click Shield, our new cybersecurity division. So as you can see in this slide, it says Fridays 11 a.m. PST weekly. So one of the things that our cybersecurity division really focuses on is having something called a think tank. This is something that I've seen with companies like MITRE, for example, which leads a lot of the R&D for our defense contracts and actually have a strong voice and opinion to like the NIST framework, for example. So the purpose of this think tank is to come together from various backgrounds from our right-click team. So I have myself with a strong like compliance background. We have both of our CEOs. We have Isabel, our marketing lead. We have some of the best engineers I've had the pleasure of working with Christian, Kelly, Connor. our VP of Operations, Avi, and the list goes on. So everybody that I mentioned just now are all from different disciplines. Now, coming together, whether it's trying to find an innovative solution for a specific client or how to view it from like a marketing standpoint. That's the purpose of our think tank. This way, it allows us to be flexible for any sort of changes in the cybersecurity market, like Jim mentioned. And this is kind of the brand that we're kind of moving forward with. So one of my favorite quotes is never innovate to compete, innovate to change the rules of the game. Later on in this presentation, my colleague Connor is developing such a beautiful application and to help you with any of your compliance needs. So these are kind of the main attendees. I can't uh, articulate enough. The word that I want to use is special. Um, this group of people is a really special team, not just from a technical or business standpoint, but like just them as people. I really respect everybody at this company, from especially from an integrity standpoint. It's very inspirational and it comes from our leadership. So Avi uh, is the one that initially screened me to join RightClick, and then thank you, Beju and Jim, for giving me the opportunity to work with such an incredible team. The coin phrase, "It takes a village." This is my village, and we're excited to be here. Now, um, how does this pertain to our clients? So that energy from not just from me, but our entire group in that think tank, we really focus on the why. So why do we do this? I love our country. So defense contracts are my bread and butter. I grew up right by Washington, D.C. Half my family's in the Navy. So for me and a lot of people, not even just within our enclave or our cybersecurity division, we really love the United States of America. So, and our job is to not just protect, like from a military standpoint, but our communities, which is you guys. So that's kind of how this is driven and our goals and our why, I guess. And then how we're going to do that. So if you look here, we have a various number of frameworks that we can adhere to. But those specific different frameworks like NIST, ISO, HIPAA, that's something that we would tailor unique to each one of you. Now, how we're going to do it, one of the things that is part of our playbook is called a kill chain. Now, it originally Lockheed Martin had the idea of the kill chain to kind of execute an offensive strategy to look into your organization and essentially nitpick every single vulnerability or potential control gap, et cetera, et cetera. We like to take pride in how meticulous we are with our work. Now, what I mean by that, to give you some context, is, for example, if you have finalized documentation and you have a logo, and there's different colors, for example, we'll go to the point where we will make sure that the color code is the right color code for your documentation. And so that's not even just from a cybersecurity standpoint, that's from a legal and policy standpoint. So our objective isn't just to make you cyber secure, but it's also to prepare you for the enterprise level. I've had the privilege of working in corporate America for essentially my entire career. And what we're going to do is take those enterprise grade solutions and implement them into your business. That way they can scale to the enterprise level. That way we have a mutually beneficial relationship. Now, to go more in detail about the kill chain, and again, the CMMC component, this can apply to all frameworks. The kill chain is to essentially protect you guys with the best possible hygiene. And that's from a documentation and technical implementation standpoint. The way we do it is based off of a sequential 23 step type of model. Now, with that model, it seems pretty robust in terms of how many things are being mapped per requirement. But this graphic right here will kind of give you some context of how the process looks like. So on the right-hand side, will be this different steps and processes. And if I zoom in here, it's this yellow point is the starting point. And if I zoom back out, um, this is the entire process that we'll be guiding you through until your submission deadline. So these red boxes are essentially the requirements that you'd have to adhere to, and we'll guide you every single step of the way. Next is, what is the CMC enclave and how and when to use it? RightClick has created its own enclave. So essentially that enclave is something that is separate from your main organization. So if you have a commercial side business that wants to go into the federal space, you can create a secure enclave to adhere to defense contract requirements or HIPAA requirements, depending on which industry you're in. Now, path to a successful journey. So this is where we really focus on, from not just a management and technical focus, but we really focus on the CIA triangle. So confidentiality, integrity, and availability for all of your information and data, each step of the way, really. With that in mind, the two factors that we're really focused on is how much it costs and how much it'll affect your operations from a day to day. So those are the type of solutions that we'll propose during this type of process. Now, usually it starts with a gap analysis. So if we're starting from square one, a gap analysis will essentially go through every single requirement to whatever framework you want to adhere to. So if it's the CMMC version 2 level 2, then those 110 requirements will be addressed from day one, where I would do a physical walkthrough for physical security and all the way through 110 controls from a technical standpoint. Then once that gap analysis is complete, a formalized report will be addressing all 110 requirements, and then it'll have notes about how you essentially could fix or solve them. The next portion of that is the actual risk assessment in itself, preparing you for any sort of audit or submission. The weekly cadence is something that we like to do for clients, where on Mondays, a weekly scope Outlook email will be sent out. And what that means is basically in the next 5 days, if today was Monday, I would state that we would go through a certain amount of like control requirements or control domains. And it's at a very high level. That way leadership can get involved, and there'll be traceability throughout every step of the process. And then during that same week, on Thursdays usually, is to kind of have a weekly scope recap email to kind of address that Monday email, to see if all the objectives were made or if there's any sort of critical updates that leadership may need to know, which is the purpose of the Friday meeting. During this process as well, I like to call them working sessions. During those working sessions, that's where we'll actually do the bulk of the work, whether it's a technical implementation, reviewing documentation or policies. And then throughout that process, we have a very talented guy named Connor that has been working on a very unique solution for us and our clients. So I'm going to pass it off to him.
So we're calling it Compliance Navigator. What this application is going to really do is simplify this compliance journey that you're on, and cybersecurity as well. So it's a web-based application that gives you a nice and easy viewable dashboard, so you can see your different levels, as Jim talked about, level 1 being some of those base requirements, keeping your company safe and secure. Level 2, stepping it up, really bringing you down into that control of those risks. And then level 3, some of the penetration testing and other controls that are really advanced to lock down every aspect of a company. So it's flexible because it accommodates small to large businesses as it goes from different levels. And it also generates easy reporting that you can provide to executives to keep everyone on the same page as far as your journey through cybersecurity. When, why did we make it? it was really, we saw the complexity in cybersecurity, the ever-changing environment that really can get complicated and end up you lose out on the security when you miss one of those easy requirements, level 1 requirements, because you're focused on level 2 and level 3. So you want to make it very clear when you're missing something critical, and very clear as to where you're at organizationally on your journey. And it really provides you guys an advantage over competitors, as they may lose and miss basic controls where you're able to catch them and implement. So I'm going to show you guys a quick demo of the application that's going to be coming out. In this case, made a example company for Jim. And what you can see here on the main dashboard is it's specific to your company, as well as the selected framework. So right-click shield having the 3 levels. You can see each level has the number of requirements, starting from the core 10 requirements on level 1, 37 in level 2, and 66 in level 3. So if you click into level 1, you can see the control domains Mark spoke about. And this is pulling from the industry standard for cybersecurity NIST frameworks. You can see like access control has 2. And then if you click in, you can see the actual control numbers that are related to those items. And you can even click in and upload artifacts and track that compliance for those controls. So what's really nice about this is anyone can log into this application from your executive or whoever you give access to, and they can really see in 10 seconds where your company's at security wise and cyber hygiene. What's also nice is there's some other frameworks. If you wanted to see where your company's at in relation to another framework, it's also going to be possible. I'll quickly show the export report. This is version 1 of the report that's going to show that your company is compliant level 1, as well as a brief summary as to where your company is at. And then the graph shows your movement towards level 1, level 2, and level 3. So you can see that ramp up as you really took ownership of that control and really brought those risks down. And then if you want to get detailed, you can come down into the tables and find out who who implemented the control, when it was, and then a review date, so that you can come back and review those controls in a timely manner so that they're kept all the way through level 1, 2, and 3. And then with a nice summary at the end, showing you some immediate actions and some long-term goals you may have as an organization to really make your organization more secure. So that is the Compliance Navigator. And then I'm going to turn it back over to Jim if there's any questions. I'm going to open that up.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for all your time. I think we ran through everything. I don't know, Isabel, if we had any questions to go over or not.
There's one. I think it's geared for me. Is that correct, Isabel?
Yeah, you mentioned something interesting. You mentioned going beyond CMMC 3 here at right click. I was just curious what that means.
Yeah, so great question. So beyond some of these public like accreditation, so what does it actually look like if you have the most sophisticated cybersecurity? That's when you start going to higher clearance levels. So for example, CMMC level 2 doesn't require any sort of security clearance, not even a public trust or confidential. But as you go higher, or not higher, into more I guess higher type of contracts that require higher clearances, that's when you start going to like SCIF territory, where enclosed environments, no connection to the internet. That's where you'll start going on like really special projects. Like hypothetically, if you were to work on like a new stealth bomber or something, you would need more than CMMC for that.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. I didn't expect that answer. You mentioned no internet, and it just piques my interest.
Yeah, I have a story if anybody doesn't mind. So quick story. I was on an engagement where there was a SCIF, and my colleague accidentally brought. So the skiff is basically a room, kind of like the office that we're in, but you go in, all the physical security controls, metal detectors, like armed guards, everything. When you go into that skiff, it's completely isolated from the internet that we know. And you're not allowed to bring in mobile devices. So my colleague accidentally somehow got her phone into the skiff, and they came in like with armed assault weapons and asked everybody in the room to go up to the wall. And she knew she had messed up, and we didn't see her for like a week. They interrogated her, yeah, just from a simple mistake like that. So they take it pretty seriously the higher you go.
Thanks for explaining that.
Yeah.
I know we're involved with the government contractors, so that's a very cool story. Thanks for sharing.
Yep.
Yeah, if anyone else has any other questions before we wrap this up, now would be the time to do that, but if not, the recording will be sent to everyone who attended, along with a booking link for any follow-up services you would like to schedule with us and for your convenience and review.